Horror Fanatic here. Sorry, but this is going to be a short review, due in large part that there's just not that much to talk about. Sleepaway Camp 4 Survivor began filming in October of 1992, and the film wouldn't be completed until 2012. That's right, a whole 20 years later. This is due to the film's production company, Double Helix Productions, who also handled Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3, going bankrupt and the production having to close down after only 34 minutes of footage were filmed. This footage was included in the Sleepaway Camp Survival box kit, but only those sold at Best Buy. This has led to that kit being somewhat of a collector's item. The Survivor would have remained just that. An extra were it not for John Kliza, the webmaster at SleepawayCampFilm.com's intervention. Kliza, along with the film's original director and an editor, worked together, cobbling together a narrative using pieces of the previous 3 films, which is the main problem for this film. As for its 70-minute runtime, less than a fourth of it is actual new footage. At least that's what it feels like. This is the main problem with Sleepaway Camp 4 The Survivor, as it becomes incredibly boring if you've seen the other films, and I doubt it would make sense if you hadn't. Anyway, let's get into it. Not that there's all that much to get into. Allison, a woman without an identity, suffering from amnesia, which her psychiatrist concludes is caused by a mental block from her surviving the previous 3 films' massacres, is sent back to the camp in hopes that returning to the camp, which one I'm not sure. I'm going to go with Camp Arawak actually, because no one really survived Rolling Hills or New Horizons. With the hope being that the location will trigger the memories, allowing Allison to face and overcome them. This is all explained via text scroll at the beginning of the film. Why they couldn't have gotten a double, and John Kliza could have subbed in for the psychiatrist and just said all of this exposition, I don't know. It would have added more time to this film of new footage, which would have much improved it. Anyway, the next 54 minutes of the film are comprised of Allison lounging by the lake in a bikini while reflecting on the memories of the previous murders with some terrible voiceovers.
That Angela, she was such a freak. No one knew why she was so crazy. Or did some of us know why?
Quickly you'll notice that most of the scenes they show, in fact all of them, don't have Allison, unless, that's right, you guessed it, Allison is Angela. Which, if you know the text scroll, or the fact that she's now the only one tying these jumbled scenes together didn't clue you off, sorry. Spoiler. Allison eventually meets up with a park ranger that her psychiatrist recommended that she meet up with. The two almost instantly start going at it, until Allison puts the brakes on it and flees. The ranger has a way out of proportion reaction to this,
Bitch!
and it ensues in a chase scene, as slashers tend to do. She evades him in the woods and eventually comes across a hunter, Eugene, and I guess he helps her? It's super fuzzy here. The next time Allison encounters the ranger, she pulls a gun on him and tells him to stay away from her. She then leaves to the woods again, instead of, going to her car and, leaving, and once again encounters Eugene. And this time she kills him. Off screen. The weakest manner that they possibly could do this. Next, we see Allison in her underwear, reflecting light off her knife. As the ranger comes up behind her, she turns, kills him. Well, she just turns into freeze frames, and then we get the credits scroll over his corpse. And that's the whole movie. See, like I said, there's not much going on in this film, but as I'm here, I'm going to give it the proper treatment. Sleepaway Camp 4 The Survivor has by far the worst dread location I have yet to encounter in a slasher film. It would have been improved if they could have actually thrown up a Warren sign saying which exact camp she was at, so at least I could then tie into the events from the previous films. But as the way this one goes, it kind of bleeds them all together, like Arawak and Rolling Hills and New Horizons are all in fact the same summer camp. And the fact that of the 34 minutes of new footage, the only new locations we actually see is a rundown cabin, a lake, and some woods, there's just not much here. The climax, if you want to call it that, comes out of nowhere and is comprised of a chase scene, as slashers tend to do. At least this time around, it does give Allison enough time to remember she's Angela, and then, get back to what Angela does, which is murdering. Although she does only murder 2 people this time around. With so little going on in this film, it's not surprising to see a climax that is so lackluster. The inciting incident. There you go. Well, I guess you could argue that the inciting incident is still the boat crash from the first film, but I'm not going to. The killer is once again Angela Baker, though this time with amnesia and going by the name Allison. It's really easy to tell that Allison is Angela, mostly due to the fact that the clips lifted from the previous 3 films include a lot of killer POV shots from Angela's perspective, and that the clips are also lifted from all 3 films, in which Angela is the only person to visit all 3 camps and to survive all 3 massacres. Allison's regression back into Angela, or Angela just simply regaining her memories, could have been played up more, and probably would have if the film had been finished. Well, more traditionally. Well, if 34 minutes weren't all of the footage taken. Now, I've read a handful of arguments claiming that Allison isn't Angela and is in fact Judy, and they cite the lack of scarring on Allison's stomach when Angela got stabbed more than a couple of times. Also, that Carrie Chambers, who plays Allison in this film, looks more like Karen Fields, who played Judy, than she does Pamela Springsteen or Felissa Rose. Like, getting similar looking actresses was ever something that these films did. But, as I have IMDb on my side, those people are idiots. I was upset to see her depiction in this film, as there's a lot of words I can use to describe Angela throughout the films. Meek, timid, but also cunning in the first film under Felissa Rose. Then Pamela Springsteen brought an air of aloofness and disassociation and straight up crazy to the role, but I would never describe the character that either of these women deliver as weak. But I would use that here with Carrie Chambers' version of Allison. The victim pool, if you can call it that, it's more like a victim puddle in my opinion, as Sleepaway Camp 4 The Survivor clocks in at a measly 2 deaths, making it possibly the lowest slasher body count that I have ever seen. This is due to the vast majority of the deaths in this film, well, all of them but 2, being in the flashback scenes, often out of context, and often cutting away before the payoffs. The only 2 kills that Sleepaway Camp 4 The Survivor really provide us with are Eugene and the Ranger, and both occur off-screen. And I can understand this due to the limitations of the film. The limitation being that they were working from only 34 minutes of footage. But that doesn't mean I have to like it. Final thoughts. I find it really sad to see that the series has fallen so far. From being one of the most iconic slashers of the 80s, to being this bargain bin bullshit. Sleepaway Camp 4 The Survivor is hardly a cohesive narrative, let alone a slasher. In fact, Bloody Mary may in fact be a far better slasher than this film. Thankfully though, Sleepaway Camp 4 The Survivor isn't the series' swan song, as we still have one more film in the series left to review, Return to Sleepaway Camp. And that's all for The Survivor. I'm Horror Fanatic, and I'll see you next month.